is May 12, we have a special meeting regarding the precinct changes. Allison, are you going to start talking?
Absolutely, I'm ready.
Okay.
The reason that we called the special meeting was in order to ask the board to take a vote on a precinct boundary change. And then I also want to brief you on the status of where we are with polling places. The precinct boundary change that we want to ask the board to take a vote on, I will share on my screen as soon as I can pull it up. Do you see a document on my screen that shows precincts 937 and 947?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, what we're
Yes.
asking the board to do is to create a new precinct 947 that basically juts into precinct 937. The reason we're asking for this is because the original documents that we used, the original data that we used, did not include a change that was to the legislative district lines. And so when we were going through the data and this was brought to our attention and we went back through and checked, we discovered that there was basically a versioning issue where there was a version of the data that we did not have. So we got that data, we checked it, we proofed it. This is the only change that we need to bring to your attention. Unfortunately, this little cul-de-sac, this little area that you see jutting into precinct 937 is standalone. It has a unique jurisdictional makeup. And so this will be a new precinct that we are asking the board to create out of that little area where you see just a few streets. And so we're happy to answer any questions that you have, but what we want to do is to ask the board to make a motion and to go ahead and create this precinct 947.
Anybody has any idea?
I have a question.
I think we don't have a choice.
I have a question, Madam President.
Yes, sir.
So, first of all, I agree that that we don't have a choice. I guess what I'd like to understand is, Alison, you said that there was data that was not provided to do this. Can you explain that process to us? Like, where does the data come from, and how is it that this managed to get left out?
Janet, I'm going to ask, or Chris, one of you. I wasn't directly involved in this, so I'm going to need one of you to kind of explain how this process works. Yeah, Chris.
When, excuse me, this is Chris Zizit. And when the legislation is created, a list of all of the changes or the directives on the lines, whether it be congressional, legislative, or council, is created a list that designates where the line will be. The original list that was received into Montgomery County as our resource to start making changes for the legislative districts had lists of where things were changed and where the line should fall. As we were going through and proofing, we realized that there was a second list issued that we were not aware of. And when we started comparing and proofing that list against our work, we found that there was an area, this 947, that had been carved out by the legislative line that we were not aware of. So we had to backtrack, research that geographic area to find out that it would be a standalone precinct. It would have its own jurisdictional makeup. It has a little over 300 voters in it. I think it's 335. And so we created this last precinct to accommodate that geographic area.
So thank you, Chris. When you say it was issued, who issues the first list and who issues the second list?
Maryland State Planning issues it after they receive the information from the legislation.
So somebody in that process either misses some of the changes or has a second list and it doesn't go to the same distribution as the first list.
I think it's all published out there, available equally, but it was a list that was published after we believed we had a final list.
Okay.
Okay,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Alan,
Yeah, two questions. Am I correct that the Flower Hill Elementary School is just outside of new precinct 0947?
I would have, in order to answer that question, I'd have to look at the map.
Okay, I think that's right. Anyway, next time you want to put the polling place in there.
I'm sorry, where is the polling place?
I think it's in 0937. I think it's just south of 0947.
And is that the polling place for both precincts?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Flower Hill
The,
Elementary School is on Flower Hill Way, and that's south of Crabtree, for example, Crabtree Laurel Lane. And the second question is, historically, has the board ever given recommendations to the legislature or to the county council to fix some of these little notches in the future so that there's an easy process for including precincts within districts?
well, I will honestly say, I think that the local level should be included in the process because there are many decisions made that impact the local level and creating these small jurisdictional areas. But I'm going to let Alice soon expand on that. So we're going to switch places.
okay.
Yeah, our challenge here, of course, or our core challenge that tends to lead to these small precincts is the collision of the lines where we have the county council and we have the legislature, but then in the two separate actions of and of course, the Board of Education, and then the legislature in the two separate actions of setting the legislative lines and setting the congressional lines, where we just have different sets of decision makers. And boy, do I really wish that I could lock them in a room and have them make all these decisions so that I don't care whether they go down the west side of the cul-de-sac or the east side of the cul-de-sac, but boy, do I wish they would choose the same side of the cul-de-sac. We have attempted really a number of times, I would say, over the last decade to draw attention to some of the challenges that were created 10 years ago in redistricting. Some of them were resolved, some of them were not. I am more than open to any ideas that the board may have on how we can more effectively communicate some of these administrative challenges to the decision makers. But I think at the end of the day, when we are kind of stuck with the fact that there are in fact different people making these decisions and at different times and in different ways.
Alan, historically, the board has not made recommendations.
Thank you.
Madam President, I had a quick question. So this new precinct 947 will be in legislative district 39 and
Correct.
precinct 937 will be in legislative district 19. Is that what I'm seeing here?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other question? Yes, David.
Thank you, Madam President. Kevin, when you said that historically we haven't made recommendations, does that mean we also haven't made recommendations on kind of a more general basis? Because I certainly understand we haven't recommended which side of the cul-de-sac they go down. But it seems like every time we have to create one of these small precincts, it does create some issues for us. One of those issues obviously is, you know, combining precincts in one polling place that have different ballot styles. But another one is that by law, when we establish polling places, they have to be in precinct or in an adjacent precinct. And whenever we create a new precinct, we are we're changing what is adjacent, which then has issues for our polling places. And a lot of times the adjacent precinct is not the one that has the most convenient polling place for the voters.
That's true. And the board has not made even broad recommendations, which in the future would be a good idea. I don't know if the state board, given all of these issues in terms of polling places, whether they would consider a waiver of the requirement that it necessarily be the adjacent precinct if there is a more convenient precinct.
Do they have that authority? I realize I'm asking for instant
Probably
legal
not by
advice.
statute, no.
Right. I mean, because it seems like we have a number of circumstances caused by in large part caused by, and I realize that Allison hasn't given us her presentation yet, but caused by the change of the date of the primary, where places that were available as polling places for the statutory date for the primary may not be available for the postponed date for the primary. So we're scrambling to find polling places in those cases. And there are instances where the adjacent precinct is actually, it's adjacent as the crow flies, but not necessarily as the car drives.
Yeah.
And so it's not necessarily, not necessarily convenient. Now, to me, it seems like an emergency because obviously, we've moved the election date. That's the cause of the problem. But on the other hand, I don't know, maybe we can discuss this offline, but I don't know whether we have an option like that because the adjacency requirement sometimes results in things that are worse for the voters.
That's certainly something that we can explore, David, and get back to the board to see whether, if it's more of a systemic problem that other jurisdictions are experiencing, maybe the state would try and seek some emergency relief.
Okay, thank you.
And I can quickly answer the question about the polling place location. I'll share my screen again.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um,
Yes, go ahead.
This is, I'm trying to move menus so that I can click. Here is the map that we were just looking at and where precinct 947 is created out of 937. And here is a close-up of a map that shows the polling place location in 937, where we would also send the voters from 947.
How many
So,
people
so-
are we
so the-
talking, Alyssa?
I'm sorry.
300 and how many
300.
How many voters are in? 335 in 947, and in 937, it would have been, what's our number from 937? Do we have that number at hand?
Yes, 937 is what it came from.
No.
Oh, oh.
Talking about voters.
Oh, voters, excuse me.
It's going to be a total of 1942 at the entire precinct.
1,942 voters inclusive of both 937 and
It's
947.
Three locations
Oh.
there.
And which one, what's the other one?
937, 939, 947.
939.
Where is 939?
That is the little tiny, one, the other little tiny one. I have that on this
Okay,
map too.
yeah, on the left
That
side.
is the other little tiny one down here.
Oh,
that
I see.
Previously
Yeah.
identified issue. So those three are together.
Okay. Can you go back to the other map for a second, Allison? So, so the voters in 921 and in the other what's the one that's next to 921? Can you go up a little bit? Yes, 921 and 922. Are they both voting at Strawberry Knoll?
We're checking.
And then the number would be the next question, the
Mhm.
number of votes.
921 and what?
921 and 922, are they
They're
both
two separate
consolidated?
locations.
No,
No,
they're
they're two
different
separate
locations. So which precinct is it, Strawberry Knolls?
922,
922, and 921 is at
Forest Oak Middle School.
Forest Oak Middle School, which is down in 920.
Mhm.
So and is 920 also voting at Forest Oak Middle School?
20.
Fair.
Gaithersburg
nine-
Middle School.
Yeah,
No,
920
920 is different.
Middle School.
Forest Oak, 922.
920 is down here at Gaithersburg Middle School.
I'm a little, oh, I see. So each one is voting adjacently.
Well,
921 is voting in 920 and 920 is voting in 901.
Yes.
Yes,
And
And
that's
901 is voting, I believe, at Gaithersburg Elementary.
right, but they're in precinct.
Right.
Um,
And we have two sites here, one site here,
so,
and.
and the, and
middle
the,
site
and
here.
the reason is because 921 is too large to vote at one of the other locations.
921,
I'm just wondering why 920 has to vote at a different middle school in an adjacent precinct instead of in the middle school that's in their precinct. And I guess I assume it has something to do with the number of voters in 921.
so what I would like to suggest is that we kind of separate these two conversations. One is about the boundary for
Okay.
947, and go ahead and have the board take the vote on that, and then that we discuss the process ahead and where we stand with the polling places.
That's fine with me.
okay. Alan, your
Yeah,
hand is up.
I thought
Yes.
I had a motion to approve that.
Oh, we didn't hear. I didn't hear.
Yeah, I didn't hear it either.
Okay, well, I move that we approve the change.
I second it.
Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Pass.
Okay, so polling places, the board is scheduled on May 23rd to take what we will need to be a final vote on the polling places. And so what I would like to do, and it needs to be a final vote because we need to get voter notification cards out the door to voters. What I would like to do is that I would like to make sure in the time that we have between now and the May 23rd meeting, that we build a staff process here that is as effective in answering the questions that the board may have prior to the May 23rd meeting. Because what I want to do is I want to avoid our time between now and then from pursuing one direction instead of another. We have reached the point because of the compression of the calendar where we need to proceed, we are proceeding with the finalizing the configuration of information in MD voters so that ballots can be printed, so that we can begin the proofing process for the ballots, so that we can begin the testing process for the voting equipment. And what we would like to have happen in all cases is for this to be a linear sequence where we're able to finalize all of our decisions about all of the precincts and polling places before we have to do any of that work. We don't have the time to do that work. I wish that I could present you with a final list of polling places today and you could vote on it. Unfortunately, we still have some polling places that are outstanding that we are still, we're still nailing down the final list. And so I don't have a final list that I can present to you today. That's why we set the date of May 23rd, because we believed that that was the best date for us. Well, the 16th, and we could, if we wanted to accelerate some of this conversation, and that's really a question for the board, if you want to have multiple meetings and multiple bites at the apple on this. But certainly by May 23rd, we need to reach the point where we are in a position for the board to take the final vote on the polling places. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure that the document that we provided to you today is the information that you are going to need. I am more than happy to field questions offline. I am more than happy to have public discussions such as the board needs in any way that the board needs them. But right now we have locked in our number of precincts, our number of the way that the system works is that we have to have data in MD voters so that the state board, as it creates the ballots and as we begin our proofing process, we have information that is locked in. At any time that we make changes, not so much maybe moving from this church to that school, but any time that we make changes that would do something like put two precincts together or split two precincts apart, we create an escalating level of additional work for both us and for the state in terms of needing to go back and reproof things. And so what I really want to do is I want to head off changes. I want to identify what those changes might need to be up front so that we can finalize that and untangle it so that on May 23rd, we can have a final vote. So I'm throwing that out to you that I am seeking feedback. I am seeking the ability to take, I was not planning to provide you with a final list of polling places until it was final. I was not planning to provide that to you until we provided the advanced packet for the May 23rd meeting. However, I believe that it is in the best interests of transparency and the process here for us to be providing you with a snapshot of where we are with all of the polling places that we are currently planning on, as well as the document that I also shared with the board, and that we did not have up on the website. I think we just got that up on the website because we had one change on the, so the format of the document that I shared with the board and historically the way that we have presented this information, I want to verify that that is, that's what you need, and make sure that we're creating a timetable where we give you what you need in advance of the May 23rd meeting. Now,
Alan, hold on, there's some question. Alan, your
Yes.
hand is up for some
Yeah,
time.
when I looked at election code section 10-101, which deals in general with polling places, I noticed that first is each polling place shall provide an environment that's suitable to the proper conduct of an election. We always do that. 2, be located as conveniently as practicable for the majority of registered voters assigned to that polling place. Can I share my screen? I guess I can't. So the first is to be practical for the majority of registered voters assigned to that polling place. And then in general, be in a public building. And of course, the exception would be if you have to do a private building. 4, be in the precinct that it serves unless no suitable location for a polling place can be found within that precinct, in which case the board may establish the polling place in an adjacent precinct. And there are other things as well. I sort of asked Kevin, could it be argued that since the legislature put majority of registered voters before it got to adjacent precincts or within precincts, that's a most important factor that we should be looking at?
I don't believe so, Alan. I think the adjacent precinct requirement is still a requirement.
Okay.
David, your hand is up. You still have a question?
I do.
Okay.
First off, let me say that I think that the section that Alan identified has a number of conflicting requirements with the requirement that we follow all of them.
Right.
Because clearly we have precincts where we have to look at the needs of everybody and not just the people in a particular precinct, and that makes it complicated. And I hope we can have an offline discussion about that. I want to respond to what Alsun said about what might be needed in order to reach a conclusion. When I looked on the website this morning, and I don't know if it's changed, the precinct maps that we had been working on from before are not there. And what I would, first of all, I think there's an issue with taking meeting materials down from past meetings, but that's a bigger issue that we can talk about another day. For this process, it would be helpful to have one document that shows every precinct where there has, where there's an issue. Because right now there are precincts that are listed in special type in the numerical list that are not on the other document that talks about the reasons for changes. I mean, basically, if we could have a list of, it's almost like a summary of the things that we've all that have been put together for this, for this meeting, and somewhere a way for the public to be able to go onto our website and see the precincts related to the new precincts related to the polling places. That would be very helpful. I'm very concerned about the idea that we're not going to publish something until the advance packet for the meeting, because that is going to limit the opportunity for the public, and we're already meeting off schedule. So I want the public to be able to say to us if they want, and I don't know that there'll be people who are going to come to us, there may not be, but I want them to be able to look and say, okay, they're moving my polling place from, I'll just take 1320 as an example. 1320 voted at Ebrook Lee, which is now Odessa Shannon Middle School, and there's a proposal to have them vote at Northwood High School, which, by the way, is not adjacent to 1320. It's adjacent to 1333. But whatever the case, if I live in 1320 at this moment, I have no idea what the issue is. I have no idea why we would be, is it too many voters? Is it, that the building's not available? Whatever. So to me, it would be helpful to just put that out there so that if people do want to say something to us, they have the opportunity. That way, come Monday, or a week from Monday, we have a possibility of being able to say, okay, we've heard from everyone. We know what all the issues are. We're ready to go. And then I personally would like to have an opportunity the day that I came in, Allison, and met with you and Janet and Chris, which when I was able to look at the maps and such, that was very helpful to me. And I might want to do that again between now and the 23rd. I realized that the sooner the better, because if there are issues, you want to work them out sooner rather than later. And I also realize you don't want to have it be a long, drawn out process. So anyway, that's my perspective in terms of what would be helpful. One list very similar to the list that shows the reasons why for the moves, I think is very helpful. If we could do that for all the precincts. So for example, none of the precincts that are in election districts that are 1, 2, and 3 are on that list. And there's a number of others that aren't on that list either. And I think it'd just be helpful to have it all in one list. Okay, thank you.
Okay, move on. What's next, Allison? Okay. What's next?
And I'm open to any other feedback in this meeting or offline. Here's what I intend to do. I will put together a kind of a master document that shows all of the polling place changes and the reasons for them. I'm going to share my screen for a second, just because I want to make sure that I understand the feedback that I'm receiving on the website. Right now, the website has a link on our main page to a redistricting page. And we can look at the placement of that and see if we can make that more prominent. But we have a link to the redistricting page that has the matrix of the approved changes and the maps. I think the feedback that I'm receiving is that when people go from our main page to the board meeting page, that the individual board meetings, the documents from those board meetings show up.
Or don't show up.
They don't, because I have.
They don't show up. If
Oh,
I, if,
okay,
if,
that's
if
the
I want to,
issue.
if I know that you
Okay.
discussed my polling place on X date and I want to go and look at that, I can't.
Okay. Okay, I got it then. I understand that it's the meeting specific information that, we'll get that up. That makes sense.
Madam President?
Okay,
Um,
good, thank you.
okay.
Yes,
We'll get it
Alex,
over the
hold
weekend.
on. Alex has a question.
Just a
Go ahead.
question for Allison on the redistricting page, then that matrix and map, are those, do those list all the changes that the board previously approved in meetings in April?
They do.
Or are there some proposed changes that have not yet been approved? I don't know.
Well, it's also dated April the 26th, and we've done stuff since then, including today.
Right.
No, the matrix was the final approval that you all did on April 25th. I updated it with the final vote on April 25th. The only change is today.
Yeah, today we have,
redistricting.
today we have one additional change for redistricting. And I understand the feedback on the, we have asked you to hold off on making a final decision on polling places because they're still in flux. And so.
How about those
that-
7 places which we, Addison and Janet and Chris, how about those 7 places that we don't have a choice, we have to take it, which we talk about it, how about those precincts?
What Nahid is referring to is some sort of ongoing, we have an ongoing sort of hot list, I guess I would call it here, of the precincts that we are, that we're finalizing. The precincts where we have some level of heartburn here about our ability to use a certain polling place, or we think we're going to be able to use it, but maybe a private site has a board that needs to vote on it, which at one point in time was a list of 7. At this point in time, it is a shorter list. I think we have 3 or 4 that are currently outstanding in terms of our determining. I would like to kind of nail down our contractual situation with those sites so that I can then present you with the final list. We're down, I think from 7 to 4 at this moment in time.
I see. Do
And
you
are
have
they-
the form?
Are they on this list, Allison?
The list that we shared with the board is assuming that we get our way on those 4 sites. I think the only one, did we have,
I put Newport on, but the other 2 are not listed, WSSC and the tennis club.
but WSSC and the tennis club are listed on the precinct list, on the master precinct list is pending, I believe.
No.
No. Okay. No, so this draft that I shared with you is not ready for a final vote yet. We have 3 or 4, we have 4 sites, it sounds like, that are still in flux on it.
Right.
Which ones are those?
She's putting them on. So we're not going to talk about the tennis center and also Kensington.
Well, my list that I have written down here, and I think Chris is checking against the document, but my hot list here is Kensington Town Hall, the tennis center,
And WSSC.
and WSSC. And then I have a 4th on my list. I suppose we have a recommendation that we are ready to make to the board, but I want to postpone that just so that we're not taking them on one by one by one by one in dribs and drabs here. which is, what's the precinct number for Stonegate Elementary? We were gonna move Stonegate Elementary to Blake High School at one point. And then we identified really that we could move those voters to Mid-County Recreation Center instead, because that would then put us in a situation, moving those voters to Blake.
As I recall, the Blake number was really high.
It was really high. It was
Yeah.
creating a situation where we would have had 8,600. We had 5,398 voters at Blake. Adding Stonegate Elementary would take us from 5,400 to over 8,600.
Yeah, wow.
That's a lot.
And we've looked at things and we can move those voters instead to Mid-County Recreation Center, which the precinct is 516. Mid-County only had 1,700 voters to begin with. And so when we add the 3,200, that takes us up to 4,015 at Mid-County instead of 8,670 at Blake. I had not presented that to you for a vote today. And so I wasn't asking you to take a vote. I don't want to ask you to take a vote on dribs and drabs of these. I'd rather do it as a whole slate, but that is one that's in flux too. I think those are the four, right? Is that we had Blake on the list that I believe we shared with the board. And so our staff recommendation is instead is going to be to go to Mid-County. We have Kensington Town Hall on the list, but we have a construction issue at Kensington Town Hall. And so we do not have a contract in hand there. And we're trying to finalize and determine if we're going to be able to use Kensington Town Hall or not. In which case the staff recommendation would be to move to Newport Mill Middle School. I believe that the tennis center and WSSC we're going to be okay on. We just need to get the final sign off. And everything else, we talked about the Imam Center. We had talked about, we had, I think, 3 other sites.
Have you gotten approval from the Imam Center?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what about the Gaithersburg precincts where the Isaac Walton League, where they vote at the Isaac Walton League?
That has been resolved.
It's, the Isaac Walton League is now, we've worked out an arrangement where the Isaac Walton League is comfortable with who they'll have to open the door, and we can go back to that site and we don't need to move it, correct?
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that.
And St. Elizabeth
Thank
is
you to
back.
Chris for that.
Let them know St. Elizabeth is back. We have that place,
Yeah.
right?
St. Elizabeth's Catholic School was a concern, but we got that one resolved as well.
That's at least good news. Yes.
Can I
Yes,
ask what the
Elise.
status
Hold on,
is?
David.
Okay, sure.
Elise, go ahead. Please raise your hand.
Was the resolution of the Silver Spring Civic Center to just move from upstairs to downstairs?
Right now, that is our plan, is that we are going to begin voting in the upstairs area, and then we are going to move midway in the middle of the night, basically, from upstairs to downstairs at Silver Spring. Kevin, you don't have anything new to report on that front, do you?
I spoke to the broker again this morning, and he said he'd try and get back to me before our board meeting at noon, and I did not hear from him.
I guess the rubber's about to hit the road.
All right.
Yeah, okay, go ahead. Thank you, Elise. Any more? I don't see any hand. What is next? Allison,
Those are all the agenda items that I have for this special meeting.
okay, anybody has any question? Concern? So we will move to adjourn, right?
Mhm.
Okay, do I get a motion?
I
for
move
adjournment?
we adjourn. I move we adjourn.
The meeting. Who's seconded? Nobody want to leave? Alan seconded. David wanted to stay. Good for you, David. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The meeting adjourned. Thank you. See you guys on May 23rd. We may see you before that if something special comes, which need the attention of the board. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah, you too.
You too.